Hi there, I'm horceror, the #2 nemesis in the world, creator of the Ultimate Nemesis Guide, and today I'm coming at you with pretty much the exact opposite of that. I'm making a guide here in this video that'll teach you how to play against the Nemesis in Dead by Daylight. Now, why would I do this? Well, there are plenty of survivors that don't enjoy playing against me simply because they don't know how. I get accusations of hacking, cheating, VPNing, everything under the moon. In interest of changing these into, wow, that was a good hit, instead of, that was unfair, I'm putting this guide out to offer, well, the counterplay to my killer in hopes of making the game better for the other 80% of the lobby. First off, we're going to go over the terminology, just so I don't have to explain every single thing that I say. Nemesis works off of a unique version of the tiering up mechanic, similar to Myers, but not quite. Nemesis gains contamination points via hitting zombies or survivors with his tentacle, going from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. Tier 1 is 5 meters long, has Nemesis move while holding the tentacle out at 3.8 meters a second, and it cannot break pallets. Tier 2 is the same length, same speed, but it can break pallets. Tier 3 is 6.5 meters long. The move speed is moved up to 4 meters a second, which is the exact same speed as a survivor running, and it can, of course, still break pallets. The whip drag is something that I'm going to reference heavily while talking about playing against Nemesis. This is his bread and butter. This is his entire skill expression. Put simply, it is when the Nemesis moves his body to drag the hitbox of his whip with him while he's throwing it out. This specific thing is what causes a lot of the accusations that a hit didn't hit from a survivor point of view. And 100% it can look like shit. I'm not gonna say it doesn't. There is a disconnect from the hurt box and the visually given hit box, and I do believe the behavior needs to fix this part of Nemesis, as well as a couple of his other survivor side only bugs. Regardless, until that day when they visually update it, the whip drag exists, and this is how it's going to work. Zombies, well, they're pretty self-explanatory. They walk around the trial, they can hit you if you get too close, and if they hit you when you're uncontaminated, they can contaminate you. More on them later, but let's just talk about contamination, because I've been talking about this a lot. So, contamination, it works on a point system. Pretty simple. Survivors being freshly contaminated via the whip grant 3 points, and striking a contaminated survivor or a zombie with a tentacle grant 1 point each. You need 5 points to get from tier 1 to tier 2, and 9 points to get from tier 2 to tier 3. So that is a total of 14 contamination points to get from beginning of the game to tier 3. Getting contaminated essentially is an extra health state. Nemesis is a 3-hit killer. Unless you're contaminated, then you're a normal 2-hit killer. You get contaminated by being hit by the tentacle, being hit by a zombie, but the zombies that hit you do not grant Nemesis contamination points, and he does not get closer to tearing up if you get hit by a zombie. So, now, once you're contaminated, what do? Are you just stuck being downed in 2 hits forever? Well, no. You have a way to cleanse your contamination: vaccines. Vaccines are located in vaccine cases around the map. 4 of these such cases spawn, and while you are contaminated, you can see their aura in white from any distance. 4 cases, 4 survivors, 4 vaccines. Easy to remember. Let's start with the first thing. I understand this is a joke Oz has already made about the economy, but the contamination economy is something you do need to think about when you're playing against Nemesis. In theory, you're thinking, well, I'm contaminated. I should vaccinate. Sometimes this is not the case. Let me preface this next part by saying that when you vaccinate, Nemesis gets killer instinct on you for 3 seconds. This is apparently not commonly known. If you get contaminated and the Nemesis drops chase and you instantly go off and vaccinate, revealing your location, he can find you and contaminate you again. You have set him well towards tier 3. 6 contamination points of his 14. That's not great. Tier 3 is a very bad time for survivors. I've had plenty of times where I drop chase for about 5 seconds to hit someone else. A survivor takes a vaccine in that time, and then I'm halfway to tier 3 during the first chase of the game. This goes for vaccinating mid-chase as well. That is a big no-no. You make yourself a very easy target to hit, even if the vaccination gets off. Remember, Nemesis becomes a pallet eating machine at 5 points. If you give him a second hit, he is going to be tier 2, and then he can break pallets. As he gets closer to tier 3, and as vaccines run out, as the trial goes on, as pallets are chewed through, Nemesis gets much stronger. So the vaccination economy is something you do need to think about. Think of them like a health potion in Skyrim or your favorite RPG. You don't want to use all your potions fighting a crab. You want to, save them for later. A teammate on death hook, while you haven't been hooked at all, might prefer the vaccine. A pretty reasonable, good rule of thumb that most survivors use for vaccinating is that each survivor gets one, because there are 4 cases, 4 vaccines, and you should ideally, you want to use these after he's already hit tier 3, so there's no overarching punishment for you using your health potions. It's just allowing you to survive another hit from tentacular zombies. So TLDR, don't vaccinate too early, don't vaccinate mid-chase, and don't vaccinate right after being dropped out of chase. Wait a little bit and see if he's going for someone else. Also, try not to vaccinate unless he's already in tier 3 or you're on death hook. Now that we've covered the economy, let's talk about what to do in the chase itself. There are a couple of pretty common misconceptions that I want to talk about, and I say this as a player that has thousands of hours on Nemesis. This is stuff that I see people do that simply does not work. First off, let's talk about ducking. Some players occasionally ask me if Nemesis has a crouch tech similar to Demogorgon, Hillbilly, and Blight. I am coming out to say this. There is no crouch tech against Nemesis. Crouching out in the open simply makes you an easier target, and it's bad. Don't do this. Using the crouch button, which I'm just going to call ducking, to differentiate it from a, air quotes, crouch tech, is a different story. You can duck some things. You cannot crouch tech some things. A good Nemesis is going to be going for hits over obstacles, and if you can see him pulling out his whip, while you're at a roughly chest height, he will likely go and attempt to hit you over it. This is something you can duck. Out in the open, don't even bother. Legitimately just hurting yourself and making you easier to hit. Now, of course, like anything, there are going to be exceptions to when you duck, which is mainly during a whip drag. A Nemesis that knows how to whip drag is going to be eyeing you as a survivor to see if you react to these. If you don't react to these, he will go for them a majority of the time, and I'm speaking from experience, because it just makes getting hits easier. The time when he will not be going for these mostly is when you do not react to these, he'll be going for them. But if he's seen that you don't duck when a whip is thrown over an obstacle, he might just continue throwing them at you and hit you for free. If you duck at obstacles for too long, he can simply swap to a whip drag and hit you very easily by holding the whip and dragging it after you duck. Now, I've talked a lot about this whip drag, this fabled thing. It sounds very, oh, I can't dodge this at all. It's impossible. We briefly saw this earlier, and to dodge it, from a survivor point of view, it's pretty hard to deal with. Nemesis has a couple of bugs, the visual disconnect from what actually hits you. The absolute first thing you need to do upon getting into a chase with a Nemesis is finding out whether or not they know how to do this. A lesser experienced Nemesis will not be using the tentacle outside of breaking pallets with it. An experienced Nemesis player will be hitting you over obstacles, around corners, and lots of other stuff. If a Nemesis does not know how to whip drag, juking sideways is much easier because they just throw the whip at you with no correlation to your position. They don't course correct it. In this instance, against a newer Nemesis, you can simply move to the side and you will be fine. If a Nemesis does know how to whip drag, you need to be a lot more careful. I get plenty of hits around corners, at shack, walls, etc. by dragging the whip. Say for example, we're running at shack, and you're rounding the corner to the window. Your first instinct would be to instantly vault the window the second you get there, but against a Nemesis that is going for whip drags, they'll likely be rounding the corner right behind you, and going for said whip drag, banking on your hitbox being stuck in animation, and striking you mid-vault. In such a scenario, if the Nemesis player goes for whip drags, because you have detected this by paying attention to them over the course of the game, you would want to swerve away from the window until the animation for the whip being thrown stops, then fast vault back into the shack while he's still on cooldown. Out in the open, whip drags are extremely difficult to hit as a Nemesis player, and thus most will wait for you to be up against obstacles for guaranteed hits. Taking walls wide against players that whip drag will up your survivability by a lot. Nemesis is kind of the antithesis of what to do against killers usually. Most of the time, you just want to hug the shack wall as tightly as possible so you reach the window, but Nemesis guarantees hits against players that do this. If we're still playing the long wall of Shack, you want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, otherwise Nemesis can simply start a whip a foot or two to the side away from Shack, pull it towards the Shack, and hit you for free. Nemesis hits a lot of survivors that don't change their dodge direction too, so be unpredictable with your movements out in the open. Still run to the loops that will give you safety, but if he's going for hits out in the open, don't just keep dodging left. Plenty of times I miss a drag the first time because the survivor dodges left, and then every other dodge is also left, and then I can hit them for free because I know their habits. Don't fall into such habits. Pallets against the Nemesis. You've already heard that he is the killer that chews through the resources the quickest, the eater of planks. There's a reason that Gideon, Pallet Heaven, is his best map. Once you run out of resources, it's pretty much over. So, in Chase, the first chase, when Nemesis is in tier 1, I must stress this, if you were the first chase of the game, you were given importance that you maybe did not ask for. Preventing Nemesis from tearing up early is one of the best forms of counterplay you can do to his kit. If you are running him in tier 1, pre-dropping pallets from a distance, running into a zombie and making it hit you to prevent him from getting those 3 contamination points from hitting you himself with the whip, instead only giving him 1 per losing a health state, these things are important. Nemesis will get those pallets from you. It's not an if, it's a when. Nemesis runs Corrupt Intervention 9 out of 10 times, specifically to deal with his weaker early game. He gets stronger as he goes on and tears up. No, not like crying tears up. You get what I mean. Your main goal as a survivor in the first chase against a Nemesis is to stall. Use windows if you can, and pallets sparingly, but if you can't make it to another loop without dropping it, re-drop the pallet. Do not crouch behind the pallet, just leave. Waste his time. Nemesis, as a pseudo setup killer, can literally lose the game for the first chase, and this has happened to me plenty of times. So, Nemesis got tier 2. What can we do? Playing pallets now is going to be much harder. Nemesis keeps momentum breaking pallets with his tentacle and is one of the best to ever do it. A lot of survivors play like their health states are gold and must be cherished at any cost. Health states as a survivor are a tool for you that you can trade for other things. A lot of survivors will simply pre-drop a pallet after tier 2, then duck behind the tall end of the pallet while healthy, instead of simply potentially getting hit over it. This can be a good play if the pallet is not interconnected to a window or another loop, but if the pallet is strong, just leave. If you get hit over a pallet that Nemesis cannot simply walk around, for example, God Pallets, you getting contaminated or injured even with him striking you over the pallet guarantees that he loses the chase and you make an insane amount of distance. You will just have to walk back after doing the pallet break of shame because he has no catch-up mechanic besides his legs. The amount of distance you can gain from losing a health state is insane, genuinely, and many survivors simply do not use their health states properly, especially against the Nemesis where you technically get 3 of them.
I can't take much more of this.
The only one that matters if you lose it is the one that downs you. That is the one you need to not lose. Now, while we're talking about pallets, and we're going to briefly talk about the hitbox of the whip itself. If you are ducking behind a pallet at all, know that the hitbox descends downwards. It is not just a straight line in front of him. It does match the visual of him throwing the whip, but sometimes common sense, you know. If you are going to duck behind a pallet at all, duck behind the tall side of the pallet. Nemesis cannot hit you over the tall side of it if you are ducking behind it. His whip will strike the pallet before a crouched survivor's hitbox, and in tier 1 you can technically get hit under this, but this instance is so egregiously few and far between it's barely worth mentioning. Just make sure you crouch behind the correct side of the pallet. Visually, it will make sense. You want the planks to be covering you like a shield. Now, when we get to the late game, or tier 3, and all of these sounds, you will hear them. You will hear him as he tears up. At this point in the game, you are likely running low on pallets, vaccines, and your teammates are very likely all contaminated. Tier 3 is a total of 14 contamination points, which is 4 fresh contaminations and 2 hits or zombie killed, 3 full chases, which is 3 + 1 + 1 × 3. This doesn't even consider add-ons. We'll briefly talk about those later, but mostly it's just Marvin's blood. Tier 3 is definitely Nemesis's most threatening time, as the range is incredible. Using the whip drag, and considering tier 3 is the same speed as a survivor, he essentially has a 6.5 meter line in front of him that can slap you. This is over half the length of Shack, it has a lot of range, and Nemesis can even drag it forwards to strike you at vaults. It is deadly. As far as counterplay, you need to respect the distance that it has. 1.5 meters doesn't sound like a lot extra, but when you remember that Nemesis moves at the same speed as a survivor in tier 3, at 4 meters a second, he does not fall off while holding it out. If you lose speed for any reason, So if you vault in his range, you turn a corner, he is catching up to you. Prior to tier 3, if he holds the tentacle out while you're out of range of his 5-meter lethal distance, you are gaining distance on him. In tier 3, you are not. It sounds small, but it is a big difference. It is the difference between him keeping pace with you and you getting away. The strongest thing you have against this is distance. We talked about this earlier with pallet play, but Nemesis is an anti-loop killer. Ideally, you don't want to be in his 6.5-meter range. You have to put forth all of the encounters you've had with him before in your head. Does he whip drag? Is he patient? Does he go for hits over obstacles? You need to use everything up until this point to survive tier 3. Duck hits if he goes for them. Take whip drags wide. Go to loops that... Let's cover loop choice now. I'm gonna be honest with you, I do not want to cover every single loop in the game for a single video. I'm going to give you aspects of loops to look for and what to avoid. There are plenty of characteristics, regardless of the loop itself, that can be positives and negatives. Shaq is very strong at tier 1 and tier 2. You still need to check if he's the type of nemesis to go for hits that can be ducked, a whip drag user, etc., but short wall loops are great against a nemesis that doesn't whip drag, such as this loop under the pig vat in the game. But if he goes for hits over things, sees you duck, and then holds the whip out to hit you with the whip drag, these short loops are terrible. Nuance is very important. There is not a silver bullet that's going to work against every single nemesis player. Taller wall loops, which labeled as tall from a survivor's point of view, those that you can see him over but he can't see you, such as those on Autohaven, are excellent in general because Nemesis is tall as fuck. However, these taller wall loops on Autohaven can also be bad because they're extremely tight corridors, and if he's behind you, it is the easiest hit of his life. Tight hallways, such as these on Autohaven and on RPD, most notably the locker room, are literally unmissable. You want room to maneuver as a survivor. These hallways are sometimes even undodgeable if a nemesis can't whip drag. So, brief mention in self-promo, if you don't play Nemesis, my Whipped into Shape series of videos shows you what Nemesis can and can't hit over, and this can maybe give you a little bit of perspective into the mind of the Nemesis player and what the Nemesis is doing, and some insight into the Nemesis' actions. But of course, loops aren't the only thing that Nemesis has going for him. We haven't even taken zombies into account. A player 2, a player 3 on the team of the Nemesis. So, zombies. How do they work? How do we deal with them as survivor? Craig and Julia, my humble employees. Today, I'm going to teach you how to deal with these pesky little dudes. Aside from saying just run any means necessary, forehead, counterplay within the game, not just bring a perk. So, horse, how do zombies work? Well, realistically, they don't. Am I biased? Yes. But...
Oh, fucking what? Oh my, you fucking,
Survivors have plenty of mention of zombies kicking them off generators, harassing them, hitting them around corners, etc. Zombies' base speed are very slow, 1 meter a second compared to a survivor's 4. They physically cannot catch you if you're paying attention. They spawn in and start meandering, either until they happen to meander to where a survivor is, or if they hear loud noise notifications, such as fast vaults, missed skill checks, etc. Zombies can also hear certain perks. See my Ultimate Nemesis guide for that. I covered every perk that they are attracted to. But for the most part, just know that they can see you, and they will hear you working on generators within 6 meters. That goes through floors, walls, anything. Do not do a generator if a zombie is walking away from it, because it will just turn around if it's still in range and not chasing somebody else. If you're with a teammate doing a generator and a zombie is bothering you, one of you should essentially take the dog for a walk. That is, get the zombie to be following you, then walk it off somewhere else before looping back around to the generator. If you're by yourself, you'll usually want to try and do this swing and miss strategy, which takes practice. I'm not personally very good at doing it, but essentially you want to make the zombie swing at you, you want to make it miss you, and then you run behind it while it's in its cooldown animation, and then it basically doesn't know you're there anymore. And if you don't want to do that, you can always just walk them off, then loop it back around to your generator, your totem, whatever you were doing before you were bothered. Alternatively, just kill them with the pallet or head on. Any means necessary also makes it much easier to deal with, because you can simply put the pallet back up after killing them, which is rude, but Craig and Julia will understand. The thing to know about killing zombies is that when Nemesis kills zombies, they spawn in 15 seconds, and when you, as a survivor, kill zombies, they spawn in 45 seconds. So, killing zombies does give you more value than if the Nemesis were to do it. And of course, just before I forget, zombies can be blinded. You can do this with a firecracker, you can do this with a flashbang, you can do this with a flashlight, and it gives these items a lot more value than they get normally with safes, because you can also do something on the side when you aren't getting a safe. Now, speaking of value, Nemesis has some add-ons that give him some value that actually does something for him. But realistically, like 5 of these add-ons might get ran. We're going to cover all of them, and I'll point out the ones that you actually do have to worry about when we get to them. So as a lot of Nemesis's add-ons simply do not do a lot, I'm going to kind of gloss over those. I'll give you the information on what they do on screen if you want to pause and read them, but if they don't do anything, I'll tell you they don't do anything, and their section is going to be really short. Okay, Broken Syringe increases vaccination time by 5 seconds. The bar will be red when vaccines are taken, and this add-on is nearly never ran. The Stars Combat Manual turns the auras of zombies from white to yellow for 6 seconds when they hit a survivor. This is literally a meme add-on and does nothing for Nemesis. It is never ran. Brian's Intestine is the worst zombie move speed add-on. There are 3 others, and every other one is better than it. Nemesis literally has no reason to ever run this, so don't even worry about it. The Visitor Wristband increases the field of view of zombies by 10 degrees and increases the distance they see survivors by 2 meters. It is never going to be ran unless it is comboed with the Admin Wristband, but even then, it's still pretty bad and you don't have to worry about it. The Admin Wristband, as I just talked about, does the exact same thing as the Visitor Wristband, but slightly better. It increases the field of view by 17.5 degrees instead of 10, and the distance for visual detection by 4 meters instead of 2. They can stack with the Visitor Wristband, but it is still worse than just having raw zombie movement speed 9 out of 10 times. This is not going to be an add-on you notice, and it's not going to be an add-on that's really ran too often. Mikhail's Eye is a better zombie movement speed add-on than Brian's Intestine, clocking in at an added 0.35 meters per second over the Intestine's 0.25, but it still has better counterparts. It's okay, it's relatively common for its cost, and like you might see this every once in a while, but if they have better add-ons, they're not going to be running this at all. The Adrenaline Injector increases the killer instinct that reveals you upon vaccinating from 2 seconds to 5, which sounds decent as it's over 100% increase, and the Killer Instinct Increase add-on, which is a thing that cannot be countered by perks that prevent aura reading, such as Distortion or Off the Record, but it is still limited use, and it's kind of disappointing. It can get value in combo builds with the Iridescent Umbrella Badge, which we'll talk about a little later, but it's still not good, and you're probably never going to see this. Marvin's Blood is very easily Nemesis's best add-on. You will see this in pretty much every single game you play against the Nemesis. It increases the value of every single whip hit on survivors by half of a contamination point, so fresh contaminations will be worth 3.5 instead of 3, and strikes against those already contaminated will be worth 1.5 instead of 1. This allows the Nemesis to reach tier 2 in the very first chase of the game if he uses the whip twice, and it will be very noticeable if you hear the tearing up notification before a down even happens. You will see this a lot. Zombie Heart is just bad. It increases the value of whipping a zombie from 1 contamination point to 1.75, and as a survivor, you're not really going to notice this ever. And it's never ran, so don't even worry about it. T-Virus Sample does literally the exact same thing as Zombie Heart, but it takes the values from 1 contamination point to 2 instead of to 1.75 like Zombie Heart. So you get a full extra contamination point from whipping zombies. It's okay, but it's never really worth running. You don't have to really worry about this one. The Plant 43 vines are bad. They're like the Broken Syringe, but for opening cases instead of vaccinating. It makes opening cases 4 seconds slower, and no Nemesis is going to run this. It's kind of a waste of an add-on slot. Now, Tyrant Gore shares the same niche as Zombie Heart, so it adds an extra 0.75 contamination points per whipping a zombie, just like the Zombie Heart, but it also makes them respawn 7.5 seconds faster. It's fine, and I don't personally like it, but you might see this every once in a while. Serotonin Injector is Nemesis's undetectable add-on, and gives him the status effect for 15 seconds when a zombie dies by any means, whether a survivor kills them with a pallet or head-on, or if the Nemesis kills a zombie himself. Easily in his top 4 add-ons. You will see this a good bit. Fortunately for you, you can still hear Nemesis's big stompy boots when he's running around undetectable, and you won't get grabbed off of generators. You might see this semi-frequently, but it's not going to be his most common add-on. The Liquor Tongue, ever since patch 8.2.0, and it being not an actual joke of an add-on, has become Nemesis's top add-on, aside from Marvin's Blood, and it actually gives him agency in chase. The slowdown you get from being whipped as a survivor, it goes from 2 seconds to 3, so essentially you get slowed for longer upon the initial contamination, and you will notice it if you notice that you're slowed down for an extra second upon being whipped. It's really good, you're going to see it very frequently, and overall, just be more careful kill when you're being contaminated. Now, all of Nemesis's purple add-ons are pretty disappointing in one way or another, so let's cover them. The Any Alpha Parasite is an add-on that makes you oblivious for 60 seconds upon being contaminated, and oblivious is the status effect that makes it so you cannot hear the killer's terror radius, but it is also the only oblivious add-on in the game that can be removed early via Vaccination. It's disappointing, and no Nemesis is going to run this outside of a niche build centered around it. The Broken Recovery Coin add-on is just straight up bad. All it does is remove a supply case from the trial, and it is often seen as a waste of an add-on slot. This will not be ran, and you don't need to worry about it pretty much ever. Jill's Sandwich is an add-on that reveals the aura of a survivor that opens a supply case for 12 seconds. This isn't ran, as Nemesis will only get value if he happens to look in the direction during those 12 seconds. It's not one to really worry about, and you're never going to see it. The Depleted Ink Ribbon is Nemesis's best purple add-on and his 5th best add-on overall. It increases zombie movement speed by an extra half meter per second and makes them spawn 5 seconds faster once killed. Its third effect that we saw earlier makes zombies spawn in the exit gate. The third part is actively a detriment, but you will see this add-on pretty commonly because of the zombie movement speed part. Now, going up to Nemesis's iridescent tier add-ons, one is relatively non-impactful, which is the Iridescent Umbrella Badge. It makes you exposed for 60 seconds upon vaccinating. In theory, this is a lot of time, but if you use everything you learned from the guide thus far and don't vaccinate mid-chase or when you're in his terror radius, Nemesis has next to no mobility to actually come and take advantage of your being exposed as a survivor, and on top of this, Nemesis should mainly be going for whips, so as long as you play a little bit more carefully around vaccination, if this is in play, you'll do just fine. It's also just never used, but it's another thing to be careful about. Nemesis's second iridescent add-on, and the final add-on on this entire guide, is going to be the Shattered Stars Badge, which gives zombies a whopping 1.5 meter per second extra movement speed, up from their normal 1 to 2.5. However, this only happens when a generator pops, and it only lasts for 60 seconds. If a second generator pops during that 60 seconds, the timer is reset to 60 instead of adding an additional 60 seconds to it. It also does not stack the speed if 2 generators pop, so you don't have to worry too much about it. You just have to be a little bit more cautious around zombies and use the techniques that we taught you earlier in the zombie section to get rid of them. This one is run relatively often, but not as much as Liquor Tongue or Mervin's Blood, and it is especially run often by the Nemesis players that enjoy seeing their zombies run around. And it is often comboed with Ink Ribbon because it is additive to all the other zombie movement speed add-ons. So with Ink Ribbon, they would be moving at 3 meters a second. Talk about zooming. And that's pretty much it for the guide to playing Against the Nemesis. I hope you've enjoyed and maybe learned a thing or two. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to check me out on other platforms, I currently stream 4 days a week at twitch.tv/horceror at 6 p.m. PST from Tuesday to Friday, and I'm currently pushing for partner. I play the Nemesis from Tuesday to Thursday, and I host a community Swift night on Friday. I have a YouTube channel, obviously, where I would appreciate if you like this video and subscribed if you aren't already, and a TikTok should you want to view my short form content and clips. Those clips are also posted on Shorts, but I have a Twitter where I post my drawings that I make during my streams that you too can redeem if you have a fun idea for one, and a Discord where my community gathers. All these links will be in the description below, and with all of that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all of your support, and I hope that you have a lovely day, night, morning, evening, afternoon, or whatever it may be for you. I will catch you when I catch you, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!